They can sense weakness. They can smell it. We wish you luck. This is one of those moments where I'm like, I need to be less strict. I'm being too stuck up about this. Screens are habits and crutches for parents. And I hate it when people go back and like, when I was young. But think about the cost. And I think that's what we have to talk about next.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm crazy. Let me know in the comments down below if I'm like a terrible parent. Screen time for me is the bottom of the totem pole. I think it'll absolutely bamboozle you, screen time, if you don't take control and really use it as a tool versus it using you. We recently had friends over that don't have children of their own and have never met our kids, and they commented on the lack of screens. This got us thinking because initially we didn't even think this was strange, but clearly they had been around other children where screens were more omnipresent in their lives and interactions. This is something that is near and dear to our hearts, especially mine. I feel very passionately about screen time, and in today's video I want to guide you through our process, our history behind screens, what we feel screens take away from our lives versus adding to them, and things that you might be interested in doing if you are looking to either set your family culture and values around screen time or lack thereof, or ways to minimize your current screen use for yourself and your kids. If you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Julie. This is my husband Ryan. We are on a mission to help parents who are feeling overwhelmed, maybe uncertain, confused about the big decisions that we all face in modern parenting, to help them feel a lot more confident and secure and able to trust their intuition when it comes to their kids and their family. If this is something you're interested in, please go ahead and subscribe down below. Don't forget to ring that bell notification so you know every time we upload an episode. Give this video a like if you want to reduce your screen time, and share this with a parent who may be interested in this topic. Before we get into it, I just wanted to say one thing that I think is really important when it comes to screen time. No time in this video, and hopefully not in my content at all, will you hear us prescribe how much screen time we think your child should have. That is not our job. That is your job. If you're looking for specific guidelines from the experts on screen time, there are websites like the American Pediatric Association that will tell you how much they recommend for babies, toddlers, young kids when it comes to screen time, and some version of restriction, how many hours a day. I think there's a lot of research that has not been done on screen time when it comes to children. We're really noticing this surge and them growing up now and maybe still in 10 years time. And so we don't want to be prescriptive. We just want to give you the tools so that you can make the best decision for your family. So one of the things that I wanted to start with so that you can understand us a little bit better is kind of our relationship with screens as kids growing up. So I thought maybe you could tell me, because I actually don't know this, what was your screen time regime boundaries as a child?
Well, I definitely didn't think we had the wealth of opportunity to watch TV or screens now. There was obviously 3 channels on the TV growing up. If I remember, I never was really allowed to watch TV after school. I mean, the TV was always around. It wasn't this big debate. Yeah, big debate with my parents. And I just remember the only time I really remember watching TV was like Saturday morning. Was like a big.
When your parents were trying to sleep?
Yeah.
The cartoons?
Yeah, exactly.
You did
yes.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
I think I did that too.
Yeah, I remember that. But, you know, definitely wasn't the wealth of choice we have now. There's obviously no social media. So I think I'm a little jealous of our parents from that point of view, but they didn't have to
I think it's harder.
Yeah.
I think it is a lot harder now because I think what's really interesting, and we'll get into this, is that we grew up in the 80s, 90s without so many of the gadgets and technology that our children have. So we're a generation where we don't really know what to do. Like we're learning at the same time as our kids are, so that's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we watched quite a lot of TV. It got less and less restricted as we got older. There was definitely this priority of, you know, you do your homework before you watch TV. I think in South Africa, there's a big culture around watching, and here too, like sports on TV, and then like the Sunday night movie. Shout out to Mnet and Carte Blanche if anyone from South Africa is watching. I mean, I watched that fairly religiously. And then as I became a teen, there were certain teen shows like, you know, that were coming out. As a girl, I did do a little bit of video games, but like I wasn't super obsessed. I think boys, that's a much bigger conversation. And something that we are learning to navigate with our almost 10-year-old son. Did you play a lot of video games growing up?
I played a lot of games on a computer growing up, and it definitely was restricted for me. A couple of hours in the afternoon. Was have friends over and play. But I just think it was a different backdrop. I think a lot of these games and social media and things that the kids consuming the iPads is sort of created or engineered to be addictive. So
right. So that was my next question for you.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's a lot more addictive?
Oh, definitely.
Now?
Definitely. I think.
So we're dealing with like a different beast.
Yeah, and also if you just think about our personal lives, right, in terms of, everyone I think has doom scrolled at one point in their life, right? So I think definitely they've made those apps way more harder for us to control, and I think for kids it could be a potential recipe for disaster, because I think you would agree, if we put our children in front of a TV, they'd watch it all day and never leave. I don't think they would actually leave, maybe to get some water or something if they actually had to. But
go and pee if they really need to. I don't even know. So we're going to fast forward, say, 25 years. Now you become a parent, you have your first child. What would you say the culture of screen time is in our home? Like what is our rhythm with screens? Because something that I didn't say at the beginning is we do have screens in our house. We just choose to use them very specifically.
Well, yes. I mean, I think it's probably good to talk about the history. I think we use them solely on planes. I think that our kids thought iPads only worked on planes.
Yeah, for as long as we could keep up that myth.
And that's because we had long sort of transatlantic flights, right, to go to South Africa, and sometimes it was just much easier to have them watch a show or have access to an iPad. And then as they got older, they realized iPads worked off of airplanes, unfortunately. And so I think, we have pretty sort of strict rules, I think, compared to our peers, which is, we don't use screens at the dinner table or at meals. We really allocate, an hour a weekend to screens. And that's, if they've, completed chores, or it's typically based on them behaving and or sort of achieving things that we want them to do. If that makes sense.
So I feel like screens are the bottom of the totem pole for us. So we can interact with the screen, whether that's watching a family movie or a sporting event. This is when we would allow them to watch like the Olympics. Ryan really enjoys watching tennis. Our older son's really into tennis. We would watch Wimbledon, the French Open, these big sporting events, occasionally documentaries, that kind of stuff. We try and be very intentional. We do not have the TV running all day long. I think it's a me problem where I just can't handle the background noise. I can't focus, and I think our children would stare at it all day long. That's just me, and I feel like I have data to back this up, because as Ryan said, we've taken long haul flights, and that was when we decided to give the two older ones, we bought mini iPads, because we were flying to South Africa, which is typically a 16-hour flight, 13 to 16 hours just on one airplane. And I feel like if we did not stop them from watching, they would have just watched the whole time. Like, they get so focused on it that I feel like I have faith that they could watch for hours on end. Luckily, it's an overnight flight, so eventually they'd have to sleep, but we have to stop it after about 2 hours. I'm like, okay, this is about the length of a movie. This is more than I would normally let them watch, but this is extreme circumstances. So that is when we do allow them to watch screens. But I really view screen time underneath everything else. So if, for example, as it stands, we allow our children to watch a show, or maybe two, depending on the length of the show, on a Saturday and a Sunday. That is only if we have the time. Meaning, if we're not going to meet up with friends, if we don't have some sport or some activity or a birthday party, screen time for me is the bottom of the totem pole. We do it at the end of the day so that it's not like fresh in the morning. They wake up and they're like, boom, I'm gonna waste all of my precious energy power in the morning. And I don't know if it's such a problem to watch cartoons in the morning, but I think it's the habits that you get into of like screens first thing in the morning, TV with breakfast. And that's fine. You can do whatever works for your rhythm. But for us, I feel like TV should be a reward. You've cleaned up your room, you've put your laundry in the wash, you've done your homework, you have helped out in the garden or helped make dinner or done something, and then we can all relax and watch a 30-minute show or something like that. So I would also say, now having gone through 3 children, that the younger ones, they would never ask for a screen. They wouldn't know it exists. Like, I'm talking like 1 year old, even 2 years old, and their attention spans are pretty short. And so you might find with young kids that you don't think your kids are addicted. Like, you can put the TV on and they're not paying any attention to it. But I think for me, I noticed a change as they get older. Like, now we have a 3, nearly 4-year-old. I would say before 3 years old, she didn't really care about TV, and she was also pretty good at switching it off and not really like attached to it. Whereas my older daughter, as she got older, she found it really hard to switch things off. And I'm finding that can also happen with the 3-year-old, especially if she's tired as she gets older. So, this is something that's nuanced, and you might need to change. You might think, oh, my children are like not attached to screens in any shape or form. they are not addicted to them. But as kids get older and more into it, and they find specific interests, or they start playing a specific video game or something, it might be really hard for them to stop. And it's designed that way. Even just the way from when we were growing up to now, with the fact that you have, like, we consume television through Netflix or Disney or something, where the episodes just roll and roll and roll. For us, that was never the case. You could only watch live TV. And these things, the technology improved as time went on, but typically you only watch live TV. If you wanted to watch that same thing again, you needed to record it, you needed to rent it from the video shop or whatever. It just was more inconvenient to consume content, and therefore I think overall we consumed less. And so it's something that I think we really need to be on top of. I think it'll absolutely bamboozle you, screen time, if you don't take control and really use it as a tool versus it using you.
But you have to set up as a boundary. I think that's the hard part. I mean, it's easier said than done in terms of how you may have good intentions, but sometimes kids can be persistent. You're tired. You could be working hard, and so
it's such a crutch.
It's such a crutch. So you have to really stay true and stay fast to what your beliefs are and what you think is good for your family.
That's why I think you need to create a value system around screens, like a culture in your family. So an example of that, just in a very practical term, like never mind the philosophy around screens, but as you mentioned, where we don't use screens normally, the dinner table, restaurants, appointments. We did a community event the other day, and our 3-year-old really wanted her face painted, like very committed. She waited in line with no distraction besides whatever was going around, the people in the line, for over an hour. There was no phones pulled out, and thank goodness no one else pulled out phones, I don't think. I mean, Ryan and I got bored. We switched off with each other because we were just hanging out. She was so committed to having her face painted, and we did not provide any soother for that. I think it really depends on the situation, but if you can avoid using a screen as a pacifier as much as possible, I think that's really helpful. I'm trying to think other examples of when we don't use screens. Oh, in the car. So it just in everyday car drives, screens just do not exist. Their kids never ask for it because we have never used it before. I've even gone to the trouble of, when we've been looking at a car, if we needed to buy a new car, requesting not to have the media system installed. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. Let me know in the comments down below if I'm like a terrible parent, I'm depriving my children. But we did a lot of road trips growing up, and I hate it when people go back and like, when I was young. I hate that. but it's true. All I'm saying is that we're capable as human beings to withstand periods of time without distraction. I'm probably worse now than I was as a child, but for my children, I want to do the best that I can. And by not introducing screens in the car in the first place, it's just a non-discussion. We don't have to have an argument about it, which is, I think, why people cave a lot of the time to screens, because it's just so hard to put in that boundary.
Yeah.
We did a road trip last summer, and we drove, 25 hours. We drove from Texas to Utah, and that's a long trip. It took us 2 or 3 days to get there. No screens in the car. We had audiobooks. I love the Yoto. If any of you are familiar, it's like a child's audiobook player, and you just have cards. It's not connected to the internet. It can be, but they have no access to the internet. And we listened to audiobooks. They did Lily did little elastic crafts, making bracelets out of elastics. Don't even get me started on that. And we did some drawing and a few things, but we had no screen, and I don't think they asked for it. And our oldest son, he's very lucky, he can read in the car. I can't, so he read books, but we just don't introduce. All I want to say is, there is another way. You don't have to have a screen in a car just because it's going to take a long time. And I get it. It would be easier in a lot of ways, but think about the cost, and I think that's what we have to talk about next.
Yeah.
What are ways that you have seen the benefits of having less screens? Because we've done a little bit of a mixture. I would never say we've been super heavy on the screens, but we've definitely had to dial it back and learned our lessons along the way. What would you say?
I think playtime, specifically self-play, being able to independent play is probably the best way to say that. Yeah, so independent play, being able to just really entertain themselves. Go outside.
Yeah,
I think we got Theo into tennis and playing sport as a result of, he was out.
He needs something to do.
He was looking something to do. He's, oldest is high energy, so I think having him out and about, literally interacting with the world outside is really beneficial for him, because he gets to really burn off energy. And then things like reading, right? Reading is so important, as these kids grow up. Our middle was reading at the breakfast table, right? Reading a chapter book, just sort of independently. Now she's 7 years old. and I think they just get a lot of time to also just hang out as a family. I think they play really well together, and they get to learn all the basic skills you need, which is sharing, being patient, especially with the sort of age difference we have of 9, 7, and 3. They all get to interact, and things like Duplo, Lego, Magnet tiles. I mean, all these things I think they never would be doing if they were stuck in front of a screen.
Yeah, I think also, and again, this is why we would never be prescriptive about how many hours a day or when you allow screen time. But our children in a typical school year go to school for a long time in the day, and maybe too much school, honestly, but we're not in charge of that. Then they come home, and depending on their age and who they are, they have extra things going on after school. When the heck would we add in TV time? It would be definitely bleeding into their sleeping time. It would definitely take away their ability to play, because something that I have found, and again, if your children are not as affected by this, good on you, but screen time for them, I spoke about how it's at the bottom of my value list. Screen time for our children is at the top. I feel like they would almost do screen time over anything. And that's horrible to say, but it is designed to be so salacious. Is that the right word? It's so delicious for their little brains, and their brains are immature. They can't think of the bigger picture of what else could I be doing? What else is better for me? What is a healthier choice? It's like if you have a buffet of food and foods that are going to make you feel bad or spike your blood sugar or not going to let you sleep. And then you have the healthy foods, but you don't have enough information and maturity to make better choices and maybe do 90% healthy food, 10% less healthy food or fun food or whatever you want to call it. So I just feel like we as parents, it is our role and responsibility to guide them. And as you're saying with independent play, that is a skill that I don't know if children just come out of the womb learning. They need opportunity to learn how to do this. And if you are always putting a screen in front of them, or there's always a screen available, or whenever they say I'm bored, you just go and watch a show, there's no impetus for them to figure out how to play, be creative, play by themselves, enjoy their own company. It starts in these micro moments. If there's no screen from the beginning, which obviously if you have the luxury of starting, if you're watching this and you don't have children yet, or you're pregnant, or your kids are too little to watch screens, you're in the perfect position to really evaluate your family culture and not just not just have the TV on just for the sake of it, or not just give your kids an iPad because they come with a childproof cover, that is flashy and bright colors designed for children. You don't have to do that. There is no rule that says you should do that, and I would argue that it's better that you don't. Because one of the major things I have found is that screens are habits and crutches for parents. They're addictions for parents more than they are for children, until it becomes more of the child's responsibility and personality. We get addicted by the payoff that we get from a screen as a parent. And so that's why it's really crucial that you examine yourself. But we're going to get into that in a second. The other thing that I feel like is affected by too much screen time, and remember, every family has a different tolerance level for screen time, just like every family has different tolerance for how many children they can care for and handle, the same as screen time. But I really think that screen time affects your ability, or one's ability to be present, and your attention span. Because it's this quick hit of dopamine all the time.
Yeah,
you're
definitely
always being distracted. You never have to sit with yourself and be mindful and just really focus and have concentration. And I look at our 9-year-old who can get lost in a book and just block out the world. And I don't ever want him to lose that. I think sometimes if I don't have something that really catches my attention, from a book wise, a phone, which is where I usually consume my screen time, and I really need to work on it. I feel like that, it will always trump the harder thing to do. And being present is really hard. I mean, people go to monasteries and Buddhist temples to learn how to be more present. That's how hard it is. And I think children can have that cultivated in them as they grow older, if we allow it. But if we shove a screen in their face, then
completely,
it just takes it away,
Yeah.
Before we move on to strategies that we have found that really help us with combating screens and how we guide our family, I just wanted to say one thing, because in case you didn't know, this is something that I have learned. Children's movies and television shows have age restrictions. And we've been speaking about the cost of screen time, it takes away attention, independent play, family dynamics, whatever. But actually, some of these things that children are consuming can be scary for them, traumatic. For example, I'll give you a great example. we had children around the time that Frozen was becoming really popular, and every little girl wants to be Elsa. Okay, it's just the way it is. Even now, our 3-4-year-old who did not grow up in Elsa time, I don't even know if she's watched Frozen, maybe a little short video of it. She's obsessed with Elsa. Okay, from books and things. And did you know that Frozen actually has an age restriction? I think it's 7 or 8, because right in the beginning of the movie, the parents get lost at sea. And if you're old enough as a child to really understand what that means to lose your parents, that can be incredibly traumatic, because maybe you've never thought about that before. And our 9-year-old, I think he's very sensitive and he gets really lost in the worlds. When he was probably 4 or 5, I think we tried to watch Frozen. This is one of those moments where I'm like, I need to be less strict. I'm being too stuck up about this. We should watch Frozen as a family. Yeah. And the parents die within the first 20 minutes of the movie. And he refused to watch any movie for years after that.
Yeah.
He hated it. And this is something we need to be more cognizant of. These age restrictions are put there for a reason. If you had the luxury of time, I would recommend you watch a movie or whatever your children are going to consume before they do. That is probably a ridiculous request. But you need to just be intentional about what you allow them to watch. Documentaries, sporting events, maybe something of importance that is national pride.
Even Harry Potter, the kids.
Even Harry Potter.
Harry Potter's a good one, right? There are parts of Harry Potter which I think are scary for.
Yeah, depending on your child, if they really understand what is going on, the visual and the sound and everything, it can really affect kids, and they can have nightmares. We've had that happen, and it's unfortunate because you want to watch Harry Potter, you think it's like a family movie. But the themes are dark.
Yeah.
And you need to be a good steward of your children and what they're consuming so that you don't terrify them unnecessarily. The world is a scary enough place as it is. So let's talk about ways that you can minimize screen time or set up a family culture that will work with intentionality and make you feel good about how you relate to screens in your everyday life. So as I mentioned before, I think screens can be incredibly addictive or habitual for the parents. For example, if you use a screen to help your kids brush their teeth or to feed them, so you have them watching a screen and you're feeding them. We've had this happen to us at restaurants. Or to have a conversation, or to have a pleasant car ride where everybody's a zombie. Again, pick and choose when you decide to use this as a tool, but try and not make this your habit. As I discussed, we had a road trip without a screen. It just never occurred to us that we could probably shove an iPad in front of their faces and have a very pleasant trip. But I think what we gained from that is children looking out the window, conversation.
It was a lot of fun, actually.
Creativity. It really strengthened our family culture, and I feel like we'll look back on that road trip with really fond memories. Whereas if we drugged, and I use that loosely, but if we drugged our kids with an iPad, I think we would regret it. They would miss out on so much. Never mind the ability to be able to sustain long periods of time without any kind of device. The other thing that is really important when you're looking to create a culture is knowing and having the inherent confidence in yourself that you can institute a boundary. I think a lot of the time parents acquiesce to screen time because they don't want to have that argument with their kids. And I want from this podcast and just my whole YouTube channel in general to give you the confidence and encourage you that you are the parent, you're in charge, and you are here to guide and put boundaries in place for your children. We put boundaries in place for so many things. Why not screen time? And just because it doesn't look like it is hurting them in the short term, we can't see those long-term effects. It's not like a car seat, you don't strap them in and something horrific can happen instantly. That's not going to happen with a screen, and so it's nefarious. It kind of like gets in there, kind of like junk food, like nothing's going to happen immediately, but over years and years and years of consuming junk for your brain, things are going to change. And I think we're noticing that a lot with people in the workplace now that are growing up and just don't have the same resilience or capacity that they did prior to this introduction of ubiquitous screens. So if you were advising a family about how to cut back on screen time, or you have friends that have a new baby and they want to set the tone for screens because they acknowledge that it's much harder to stop it once it's kind of the ball is rolling, what would you recommend they do as like a first step?
So my personal opinion, I think for a newborn is, our pediatrician actually was very, very strict and said no screens until 2, if you remember.
Do you remember why they said that?
No.
So I think the main reason there is not so much the child like being addicted to television. it's exactly what we've been saying. It's the parent having a TV around the child. Okay. It limits the parent's abilities, or it limits the parent's opportunity for social interaction with the baby. So we know that eye contact and talking to a baby and cuddling with the baby is very important for human development and thriving. And if the parent is zombified by a television or a screen, that takes away from the baby.
Yeah, I remember that was they were very...
But that was unique. I feel like not everybody had that kind of pep talk from their pediatrician.
She really hammered that into us, I think.
Which I found surprising. But I was happy about it. I mean, I hadn't really thought about it before, to be honest.
Yeah, but I think from my perspective, I would delay it as long as possible. Easier said than done, of course. And I think once you start instituting it, I would stick to it being...
a treat.
A treat, and what works well for our family is it's 1 hour a weekend, either on a 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock late afternoon. We also, I think, really link it to, we have a chore chart where we'd like the kids to do certain things in advance of being able to do screen time. So that's tidying their room, doing 30 minutes of English, math, or Spanish, and sort of specific things that are just super helpful to have around the house, right? So tidy room, help.
One of them walks the dog.
Exactly. Go, get the mail,
maybe take out the trash.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of feel that screen time is a treat. You should earn it, and I think honestly it's great. It gives them some more structure around it, to be honest, and helps them feel sort of accomplished when they've accomplished some of the things.
Yeah, and I found in the past when we have been like willy-nilly about screen time, and this goes for a lot of things in parenting. When I am not sure in myself what I believe, they can sense weakness. They can smell it. They know that there's wiggle room, right? If I'm like, and even this happens now because I'll have one of them come up to me and say, I really want to do this or watch this. And my immediate response is like, well, maybe. Because in my head, it depends. Have we seen this person? Did we do this? Have we tidied up this? But I don't say all of that, which I should. And then the boundary is unclear. And so then 30 minutes later, I have them coming back and asking me again. And then I'm getting frustrated. But it's not really their fault. But now that we have chores kind of instituted, we can just say to them, have you completed these things? And it's really nothing crazy, honestly. We're just trying to train them to be good, like respectful people.
Toys. I mean,
make your own bed. Yeah. Like we have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. Like they can easily do that. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be good enough. And it's just getting them into the habit. And that's what I was also going to say. It's kind of like habit stacking and a reward after you complete something. Like you and I don't watch a television show until the very end of the day when everybody is in bed and our duties are done. Like we're not watching TV in the middle of the workday or at 6 p.m. when our kids are having dinner or something, when we still have parenting work to do, you know? So I feel like this is a good way to incentivize them and to just structure their days. And as they grow up, I hope that they can start to self-manage themselves. The other thing I will say, if you are instituting a new habit or routine around screens, which again, like any sort of bad habit you're trying to break, it might be rough. It's probably going to be rough for a little bit. If you are used to, this is just an example, if you are used to your kids watching a show for 30 minutes while you cook dinner every night, but actually you don't want them to be watching that 30 minutes, you'd rather have them playing, or you would rather have dinner a little bit earlier and then they go to bed earlier, or you'd rather have family time, so you only want to do 30 minutes before dinner on a weekend. It doesn't matter what it is. How can you bring them into your world, or what can you replace that 30 minutes of screen time with so that you can reduce that before dinner? Could you have a child come and sit with you while you're cooking? Now I know that's not super fun, but teaching them, if it's an older child, teaching them how to cook with you, for you, to, you know, teaching them a valuable life skill. Could you send them outside and play soccer with them outside, or get the other partner who's not doing the cooking to go and do that? I don't know. It really depends on your personal circumstance, but just think about small areas in your life where you might want to reduce overall screen time and what you can replace it with as a healthy habit, because that's how we break habits, is you need to replace it with something else. You can't just say, okay, no TV, and then have no alternative for them to pursue, because they will revolt 100%. You know, the army will come back at you. So just know that it might be tricky those first few weeks after, and once you they realize that you're being serious, the boundary is not going to waver, they won't ask for it anymore. It is kind of remarkable. But as soon as you're on the fence, they sense weakness.
I think something else that we've had really great success with is getting workbooks for English, math for sort of grade appropriate, where
handwriting,
they get to practice some skills which they they really get into, honestly, and you get to do that with them, which is like honestly kind of fun, and you get to help them and see them learn, and so you can kind of turn that into a really sort of collaborative experience, right? Or if you're, and even, you know, oftentimes when we're cooking, they're working on these workbooks and really lost in them and learning something and having a lot of fun at the same time.
I think if you're used to putting them in front of a screen during that time, it feels hard to imagine that they might be able to entertain themselves or do something independently, but they can. And it's important that you have that belief and knowledge that given the right environment, your children can play and entertain themselves independently. And as they get older, if you have, like, we love word searches, for example, like our kids really like word search books or little age appropriate crossword puzzles, or, you know, there's lots of puzzle books, drawing, depending on your child, the age, the personality. I mean, if I put out a coloring book, my 7-year-old and my 3-year-old, my girls, will color and interact with each other for a good chunk of time. Definitely enough for me to make dinner without them, you know. And often now my 7-year-old, she's very interested in cooking and she likes to help. She will help me and do things. She can boil pasta and make scrambled eggs, and she can cook meat and, you know, basic things. And if she was on a screen, she would be 100% completely oblivious to her life flying by. Like, there's just so many opportunities and life skills that they can miss out if they're just zombied out on a screen. Now also, you know, if you have kids that maybe you homeschool or it's summer vacation and they're home all day long, you're going to have a lot more opportunity for them to be by your side learning from you in like the apprentice style situation. My kids are at school a lot of the day, and so these moments are really precious for us, and I don't want them wasting it on some stupid little cartoon that I don't think is really adding to their lives. I'm not banning it. They are allowed to watch it as long as it's not going to be scary for them or it's inappropriate, but it's not something that I want to prioritize. It's the true like leisure unwinding time, and I just feel like it's important to have that balance, but the balance is not 50-50. The balance is like 90% we don't watch screens, 10% we do, or 95% we don't watch screens. The other thing before we finish that I want to just ask your opinion on, do you think screens are something that if you let them be abundant, no restriction, do you think the kids would self-regulate? Honestly, pretend there's not a video there. Like, honestly,
I think it depends on the kid. I think we definitely have friends who are extremely lax with screens, and then you can tell the kids are just not into it anymore, or they're not as not as addicted to it. So yes, I definitely can see it's like everything in life. I think there will be some children that just are not that interested and will just move on because they've had
less of an affinity to it.
Yeah, and so that I think is something to be cognizant of when you kind of regulate something, or you make it harder to do. The kids want to do it more, and it's seen more as obviously as a treat. But I think everything else is it's life is a balance, and you have to really pick and choose what's best for you and your value system to tie it back into what you said earlier in the video, right? So I think some kids will regulate and some other kids won't. So I've seen it both ways. And
even within our family, I feel like we have different personalities of children, and some I feel like have a really strong affinity to screens and will literally give up their lives to watch a show, and others would be less interested and might want to do something else more. And it's trying to find that what is that something else more, or just trying to have less of the things that aren't really contributing to their lives, and knowing that screens, video games, apps, social media has been, very smartly engineered to be very enticing. It's not completely their fault. Just like how junk food has chemicals in it that make it super addictive and people can't stop eating it. Is it their fault that some people are just more prone to eating or drinking certain junk food and drinks versus others? Like, it's just kind of how we're chemically made, and that's completely random. You know?
Completely.
But I think if you are looking to reduce your screen time, being committed as a team, agreeing what you're going to do, having a really strong ethos around it, and knowing exactly what is allowed. Like, we know in our family we only watch screens on the weekend, so if they approach us separately, they're going to get the same response, and I think that's helpful. And you will have to respond and answer this question many times until you don't need to anymore, because you've set the boundary. So I want you to feel empowered to do that. You're not going to damage them. In fact, you're gaining so much by not allowing screens all the time and being really intentional and selective about it. And we wish you luck. Parenting is not easy, and but that's what we sign up for.
There always will be this teething period. It's always going to be hard when you put in a boundary, whether it's screens or something else, where it's going to take some...
Or earlier bedtime. You're used to going to bed late.
And so all I'll say is just stay
strong.
Stay true to your value system and deal with the short-term pain for some long-term gain.
Yeah, and work together so that you're not alone because it's hard if it's just mom or dad having to face the wrath. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, we would so appreciate it if you gave it a like, share it with someone who might be contemplating their screen time or looking for ways to reduce it for their kids. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos, and we can't wait to see you in our next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.